think it's easier if we just have dialogue.
I think so too.
It's like, I'll just ramble.
And
so.
it'll be more natural that way.
Yeah, sure.
But,
let's just go back and forth and not be so strict on.
Yeah, and
Okay. Hi, I'm Wes Booth. I'm 24. I'm from Wolfville, Nova Scotia. A few things you should know about me. I like to push my limits. I like to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I feel like I'm a solution-based person. I think a lot, and I like to think that I connect the dots. I don't know. I don't like talking about myself. I'd rather talk about the mental health aspects of today. But
tell me a little bit about what a typical day living with mental illness is like for you and how you live with mental illness.
So for me, it kind of stems back about 6 or 7 years where kind of my structure was changed in my life. I was in class, outside of class, I was burning tons of energy playing sports. And so, everything kind of was looked after and I didn't have to really organize my life. It was kind of done for me. So I had a great support system in my house. I had a great support system in school. And, when all that kind of was gone and you're off to university, you don't really expect kind of the unexpected, which kind of happened for me, where those structures that you just took for granted were gone, and then you kind of question why things aren't really working out for you. And it took a few years to realize that a lot of that structure was really important for me. And so when that all kind of comes crumbling from under you, you start to question everything, because you're like, well, I had no problems in high school, or I had no problems up to this point. And, at least for me, that's kind of when I had that realization that, okay, so maybe there is something that I was overlooking. It's almost like you're just carrying extra weight. Like, it's not impossible. It's just harder. And so when you start to question like who you are and, what your purpose is, all those unknowns that go with it, it's almost like describing the feeling that you're drowning and you're just trying to grab things around you and figure out what maybe will work. Over time, as that builds, you feel like that's over an extended period of time. That's what I would describe as like depression. So like my first diagnosis would be that I have a learning disability, which, sure, maybe I have a learning disability, but I think if everyone took the test, they'd figure out something that they're not good at. So when I heard that, I was like, that can't be the reason I'm struggling, because if it was, I had it my whole life, so why am I struggling now? I went to see a psychologist. Yeah, like, it sounds like you have a lot of symptoms of ADHD, and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I do. And then I realized that the structure brought in a lot of other side effects that ADHD has, which I couldn't, or were new to me. So the depression, the anxiety, those were like the two biggest struggles that are side effects of when those waves get way out of order, or the structure isn't supporting the waves. There's still the ups and downs. For me, there's these, right? So like when I'm up here, I can do a shitload of stuff and I feel like I can take on the world, but when I'm down here, it's very tough. And so when I've made all these commitments, when I'm up here and I think that I can take on the world, it becomes very overwhelming when I'm at the bottom. Anything that can help me keel it out a little bit would be helpful. Depression is the bastard. Like, that one, I don't know. Like, that one's really deep. And like at first I just thought it was kind of like, things weren't going my way, and like that's life. And I feel like that's probably what a lot of people feel. But when you're on top of your game, or people are telling you you're on top of your game, and you don't feel that way, then it's probably something internal that like you have to look into. I would label that like my biggest personal thing I need to overcome or battle. Mm-hmm. The challenge that I face is depression. The other ones I've been very fortunate to find solutions for. It's still not easy. So it's kind of like making your bed every morning. Just because you figured out how to make it and you have a solution how to make your bed every morning doesn't mean that it's not something that's going to take energy, and it's going to take time, and it's going to take your focus. Like, for example, like I've thought about committing suicide, but fortunate for me that like these thoughts were only temporary, because they kind of creep in like clutter, like when your room's cluttered and you're just like you just want to get rid of it, right? I feel it's the same way. Like they kind of come in those times. Hopefully it's not prolonged. If it's really prolonged, I haven't felt that. It can feel very lonely and isolated when you feel like you're not understood. If I'm open and like I'm perceived as vulnerable, like I have no problem with that. Like I'm very comfortable with that. The funny thing with my situation is I'm not scared to be open about it, but I'm just not, like, I know internally I'm not that happy with myself. You need to find those people within your life. Like it can't be everyone. It's maybe someone, but you need to find someone that you can comfortably communicate with. To be quite honest, like I understand why people don't get it, because our society's very judgmental. Like it really is. It's like we could be walking down the street and someone could be having a really bad day, and like the first thing we will try and do is judge that person. We won't actually take the other approach, or like the majority, I shouldn't generalize, the majority of people wouldn't be like, ooh, like, you know, that person probably could use a little bit of help. There's a disconnect between, you know, what we see, because we're exposed to so much today, what we see and what's reality. We're not as transparent, or it's not as glamorous to share like the struggles or to actually show the process. So when you only see the finish line and like all the wins, and you don't see like all the struggles or all the different steps that were necessary, like the day-to-day steps, which like for me, as being big and visionary and always trying to do these crazy things, I get stuck up here in the clouds so much, or in my head even. So like I'm always thinking in my head, and you know, I'm only me. Like I'm just trying to explain the things that I've learned and that I've felt, and you know, take it with a grain of salt is what I'm saying.